Recording in progress. All right, let's see what's going on here. Let's see if we're going to go live. Let's see, let's see. There we are. Look at that. It happened. It worked. We're live. Welcome, everybody, to Hash Church, Season 11, Episode 8, the Solventless episode. We'll see if we're going to go live on this other page. It says about 24 seconds, so we're just going to see if that's going. Although we're live, you can see us. It's good, perfect, wonderful, excellent. I'm going to read off a little something, something from our sponsors, and I want to thank all of our sponsors today because we really appreciate you guys. It's awesome to have support, and it's awesome to have support from really cool companies. So we got a little alarm going off there. Okay, let me just go into, it seems like I'm missing a few things today on my Zoom. There we go. All right, so we're going to start with Puffco. Thanking Puffco because, man, they're awesome. Big thanks to Puffco for sponsoring Hash Church. Puffco has revolutionized cannabis culture. They've totally normalized extracts with their incredible portable devices like the Puffco Peak Pro, boom, like the Pivot, and like the Proxy. I don't have my Proxy here right now. It's kind of over there, so I'm unable to show that. So these amazing units deliver top-tier performance and style, making them favorites in our community. Puffco's unwavering support for all things cannabis keep us lit and united. Check them out. Puffco's got your back. That's www.puffco.com. Very cool. I also want to shout out Low Temp Industries. Yeah. Low Temp Industry has built a reputation for crafting reliable USA-made solventless extraction equipment, trusted by the best hash makers worldwide. In 2024, they introduced the 30-gallon Mini Osprey, a compact hand washing system for those who need a solid alternative to hand washing or plastic washers without compromising small batch quality. It's built with the same precision engineering as the full-size Osprey. The Mini delivers gentle yet powerful bottom agitation, ensuring consistent results, and that's why award-winning hash makers trust it, including Dammit Bobby, who took first place in the full melt category at Legends of Hashish with with hash washed in a Mini Osprey. If you're looking to boost efficiency without sacrificing quality, the Mini Osprey is worth the investment. I also want to shout out Sean from Heritage Seeds, who's been an amazing sponsor for the last 4 or 5 weeks at Heritage Seed Bank. They're not just distributors, they are passionate cultivators and preservers of cannabis heritage with decades of breeding experience. They collaborate closely with top breeders to offer only the highest quality genetics. With their, oops, sorry guys. Their goal is to empower all growers with access to the world's best genetics, knowledge, and support, ensuring cannabis remains diverse, potent, and accessible. They pride themselves on ethics, integrity, and transparency, working only with reputable breeders for ethically sourced, top standard seeds. They offer exclusive, hard to find cannabis seeds with unmatched customer service, including fair pricing and accurate information. And they're, of course, going to ensure fast, secure, discreet worldwide shipping. Worldwide, for those of you wondering if they ship to Canada, with stealth packaging for international orders, free replacements for poor germinations, or dissatisfaction, and prioritize client satisfaction. So at Heritage Seed Bank, they're building lasting relationships, supporting growers, and upholding the tradition of exceptional cannabis cultivation. So thank you for that. And last but certainly not least, we want to shout out Bubble Bags. These guys stand out as the premier choice for water hash extraction when it comes to bags, and it's no surprise why. They're the original innovators who set the standard for quality and performance. Crafted with durability in mind, these bags come with a lifetime warranty, ensuring you're covered for years of consistent use. The team behind Bubble Bags, that's me, takes pride in their pioneering legacy, backing every product with unwavering confidence and a commitment to excellence, making them the trusted go-to for enthusiasts and professionals alike seeking top-tier hash extraction results. Don't be confused by the fakes. We are not Bubble Bag, dude. We are Bubble Bags. Hit me up anytime at bcbubbleman@icloud.com. And that is enough of that. So thank you to the sponsors. We'll be shouting them out as well throughout the show in the chat room. We'll put up their links to their websites. Bingo. Thank you very much for doing that. And we will also mention them right at the end of the show. And now, in the meantime, it's time to let in the panelists. So we're going to let in Pedro. We're going to let in John. We're going to let in Aaron. We're going to let in Colin. Oh, Aaron, I missed you somehow. And Nicotee. So here we go. Amazing. Get the YouTube chat going over here to see what everyone's saying. Look at you, John. You're sideways.
Oh, up over.
Dude, you
What's the
puffing on
ride?
that full mouth this morning, coming in all sideways like that, John. Nicotee's got the spliff, man.
What's good, family? What's
I
good? What's
love that you
good?
smoke spliffs as much as you do. As a full-blown hash maker, you are just unwavering in your love of spliffs, and I respect it, dude. I wish I still loved spliffs. I really, really do. Tell me how
I'll
you
take
did
dabs and
that.
shit too, you know. Oh,
I
how have I
know, but
fucked
I
how have I
I
fucked
feel
up my life with this? Is
I
that
feel
what you're
like I
about to ask?
ruined myself with dabs. How did you not ruin yourself with dabs? Because I feel like I love joints as much as you. I fucking lived for joints, dude. I loved rolling them. I loved smoking them. And then after 2 years of accidentally smoking full melt, exclusively, when I went back to joints, I just couldn't do it.
Here's my progression, bro. So as a teenager, I started smoking hash and tobacco spliffs, purely hash and tobacco spliffs for 10 years. I'd say from like 15 to 25, just purely hash and tobacco spliffs. And it fucked up my throat, to be completely honest, man. It was a lot. I was smoking 20, 30 hash. So it was mainly
I'm
that much
saying.
tobacco.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of why I went to flower and tobacco because I was able to use less tobacco to make it burn properly. And now I feel like I've got like a nice balance. I'd say for a long time it was just flower and tobacco spliffs just because it was nice on my throat. But now I found a nice balance. I smoke hash and tobacco. I'd say I smoke two hash and tobacco spliffs a day. I'm probably smoking 10 flower and tobacco spliffs a day, and I'm still probably taking an average of 5, 6 dabs a day. So
Beautiful.
it's a nice balance, man.
Yeah, I was the same
I've
way. I
grown
didn't
into a
smoke
nice
the
balance.
tobacco. I didn't smoke the tobacco, but I definitely smoked the spliffs on I was brokering weed. I was getting free weed. It was nothing for me to, sell 100 pounds, make 10 grand, and get an extra pound of weed for free. And it was just so free that I was also, I mean, fuck, I was smoking like 2 ounces of joints. And I was using those Lion of Judah papers that I found in Jamaica when I in like the in 95 or whatever it was.
Thick
First
ones,
time I
yeah.
went. Big, thick, fucking nasty papers, dude. Like they're
But in
big,
Jamaica, you
but
had to use them thick because it's too moist out there for these thin papers to actually hold up and to be
it's true.
supportive.
It's true, but I was doing it outside of Jamaica. Like back at home, I was like, I
Mm.
only smoke the Lion of Judah's, 3 to 4 gram spliffs. I'm smoking like, like you said, about 10 to 12 of them a day. My wife lived in a complete and total cloud of smoke. And yeah, now it's just it's dabs, but I will say, like, I envy you being able to smoke and enjoy that joint. Like, I'm not being sarcastic. I'm not being like, oh, I'm so much better than everyone because I don't smoke spliffs. I fucking miss spliffs. I actually miss spliffs. Just
Roll one
rolling
up,
them up.
bro. Roll one up right now, man. What's stopping you?
Fuck. True enough, man. Well, I want to welcome everyone, by the way, for today's episode, the solventless episode. Funny that I would hit Nicotia up almost last when he is literally the guy that coined the term solventless. I was like, what do you, sometimes I forget. I'll go in and I'll go
I
look at
I
the
do too, bro.
emails. I'm like, I'll just reply to an email. I don't even know who I invited to this show. I think I invited like at least 10 people that I weren't even sure of who they were, just people that had been invited to the last shows. But yeah, you guys all have something very much in common today for certain, which is our love of all things hash and solventless hash. So thanks everyone for showing up. Pedro, it's been a while since I've seen you, bro. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you as well. It has been a little bit, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely been a while, man. Always enjoyed doing podcasts with you and shooting the shit with you. And just like, honestly, your voice is calming, bro. It's just
Well,
it's calming.
that's nice to hear. I don't think I've ever heard that before.
Yeah, you kind of got it like a radio voice, man. Like you got this sort of depth to your voice where it's just like, yeah, it's a calming voice. So welcome. I'm looking forward to chatting with you today as well.
As am I, definitely. Thanks for inviting me, big time.
Yeah, I want to welcome Aaron Wade as well. Heavy Icer X. This dude has This dude has helped me. I shouldn't even say helped me. He's ran the show almost like by himself. We have about 500,000 people that follow these groups that we run, and he is like, I mean, I don't even hold a candle. He gets mad at me for my administrating. He'll be like, dude, what the fuck? Like, did you just let everyone in? I just spent the last 3 weeks going through 900 fucking people and checking the backgrounds and the groups that they're in. I'm just like, oh shit, damn, dude. Like, I'm sorry. So top notch, above and beyond, also an
Thank you.
absolutely incredible hash maker. A guy that is definitely not like, doesn't have all the advantages that a lot of people have, and he still just grinds it out and pulls it off and pushes through. He's been going through crazy shit with his family. He survived his own fucking health scares and damn near died. The guy was like 300 fucking pounds at one point in time and on every pharmaceutical drug that you could possibly fucking consume. And I just fucking love him, man. He's just a great guy, and I should probably invite him onto Hash Church a lot more, although I don't want to take him away from his administration. Hey, are you administrating the groups right now, Aaron?
I will be when I'm not talking.
Fucking hell, dude. So yeah, he's been doing like outdoors and he's been, I remember you were doing the plant dipping to clean the plants and that became a whole thing. So we'll be talking about all sorts of stuff like that today. I saw that you just made a bunch of hash here recently as well. It's always inspiring. There's a lot of people out there who are like, well, I can't just grow weed and I can't just like make hash. And I'm like, well, listen, dude, if Aaron can, you definitely can, dude. This guy is like fucking got it's not excessive in Aaron's world. He's using everything that he has access to fulfill and push through. And then not only that, he's constantly offering out to help people and to not just with his knowledge, but he'll go above and beyond and sometimes give away his own meds. And it's not just like he's got like massive extras, when he gives something away, he's feeling it, and I think that that's important in life when we gift. It's easy to gift when you have like 5,000 of them and you give one away, but it's a lot harder to give when you have two of them and you give one away. And Aaron's very much a give one away when he has two. So welcome to you, Aaron, and thanks for being here, dude. I hold you in very high regard. I hope you know that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, fucking A,
I learned a
dude.
lot from you, so it's always good to be on the show with you.
Yeah, full circle, man. I bet you learned a lot from a lot of the people in this room, or we've
Oh, heck
learned a
yeah.
lot from one another. I'll tell you one of the things that I learned from Nick T, which was like when I was doing the drying the hash on the cardboard, and he was like, "You don't need to do that." And I was like, "What the fuck is this guy talking about? Like, is he fucking mental? Like, you absolutely need to do this. Like, this is imperative." And what I learned was that he was in Colorado and that I was in the Pacific Northwest, and that how you dry hash in those two different places is different. And that
Mhm.
was a revelation for me, dude. I was pretty much feeling like I knew everything back then. And it was like sometimes, especially when there's another person who's like, doing really well and sharing, you kind of start feeling a little insecure, It's like, who the fuck is this guy? I'm the fucking bubble man. It's like, well, you know what? John made enough for everyone, and I appreciate you a great deal as well, Nikiti. You've done a lot for this industry. Your passion for the hashing is unparalleled, and yeah, I'm just really great. Happy to be in a good place with you, that we can get along, that we can share information with one another, and that you're always eager to come on the show, and I appreciate you for that. So thank you very much.
Out of respect, brother. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely as well. So John Hatch is in the house as well. Hatch Hash. John is a buddy of mine who dude, he's just been making the fire melt. He's been making hash that I haven't personally seen in a long time. Really, really beautiful stuff. I got a little bit of his Death Bubba here that I left out for about, I think I left this out for about 5 minutes at room temperature, and it just turned to fucking hash stone. Now, I do have his other Death Bubba that I have kept in the freezer. There's not much left in here, but you can see what beautiful powder it is. Just spectacular 6-star bubble. John is hand washing, I believe. You're still hand spinning, is that correct, John?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yes, sir. But he's been making beautiful melts and he's been going out of his way. I don't know if you guys watched Hash Church. I believe it was Skunkman Sam's episode. There was a snowstorm. My power went out. I ran the entire church off my phone. And John was like, "Hey, you need melts today?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not going to say no." And he drove here in a snowstorm, then drove up my multi-100-foot driveway, or sorry, walked up my multi-100-foot driveway in Birkenstocks in 2 feet of snow. You can't make this shit up, dude. To deliver the hash for
Yeah.
Skunkman Sam's, celebration episodes. So huge shout out to you. I can't wait to see the papaya bang bang. Have you made it?
Yes, sir. Yeah, yeah. It's been processed, and I'm waiting to bump into you next to get it to you for sure.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I also want to introduce Kay in-house. What's going on, homie?
Hey, dude, can you guys hear me?
Absolutely perfectly.
Sweet, 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 dude. Yeah, my name is Curran. I'm one of the founders over at In-House Melts. We're a solventless rosin company based here in Colorado. And yeah, I'm just really feeling pretty proud to be on this show. I've been following you for a long time, Bubble Man, at least like 7 years now. So really appreciate what you do for the community. Really appreciate what you do for Hash. I've learned a lot from you, and so I just wanted to give you your flowers while I can. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, much appreciated, dude. Well, we're really happy to have you. I reached out to a bunch of different people. I believe it was James from Puffco who said, "You got to get in touch with in-house." I was like, "Well, yeah, hook me up. Like, put me in touch with in-house." So I was glad that
Exactly. Yeah,
you.
man. Yeah. The Puffco guys are sweet. They're awesome. One thing that I wanted to tell everybody, we are a Puffco affiliated hash company. So that's why I'm sure James recommended us. My good friend Scott Tillman's a community manager here in Colorado. And so we have a really good relationship with Puffco. I'm super grateful for how they helped us launch our brand. And what's crazy is that, we only launched this brand back in May. And so from May until now, we've had some really, really good traction here in Colorado. So not only are we Puffco affiliated, we're Dialed In Edible affiliated. And so, we have a few things that are coming down the pipeline that, I would love to share with everybody on this podcast. This is pretty dope. This is my first time being on here. And I'm feeling pretty privileged, man. Shout out to Nick T. What's up, dog? How you doing?
Hell yeah. Well, welcome, dude. Really happy to have you. Absolutely. I think I see you got a couple of, are those Kung Fu vapes you got there next to you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is our pen hardware. We're launching a new SKU. It's going to be all monogrammed and custom designed, but I wanted to show everybody the kind of hardware we're running right now. I really like this one. How do you feel about that hardware, Bubble Man?
Well, it's funny because here, check it out.
Hell yeah, dude. Hell
John,
yeah.
John, John's a homie. So he's supported us over the years, and yeah, man, I mean, I like a lot of different hardware. Right now, there's a ton of hardware. I actually got a really cool piece of hardware. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but I will show you guys really quick. I got this one recently. When I saw it at first, I thought, "Oh fuck, this is like one of those big like nicotine vapes things," and I wasn't really liking it. But if you look closely. What happens with this is there's two chambers, and one chamber holds your oil, and this little dial, these guys I met like yesterday, this little dial turns. And each time you push this dial, it takes zero point 0.1 of a gram of rosin and it brings it over to a different chamber that heats up the resin so that your resin, your rosin that's in the pen is never being heated. It's just sitting in there being held. And then you turn the dial. And so they called it like dab on the go or something. It says numb on the front here. These guys I just met the other day, but I have to say, I love this concept of keeping the material away from the heat source. I haven't tried it yet. I'm going to fill one up today and give it a shot, but I definitely think that this is an interesting piece of hardware. I love, as much as I am, somewhat loyal to brands, that there are some amazing brands. I also love novelty and innovation. And my loyalty can be slightly breached. I won't blindly be loyal. I want to be loyal to the company that's producing the most innovative and sort of new design. And when I saw that concept of being able to just click a little dab out of the material and getting it, this also speaks volumes of, will you need to decarboxylate the rosin? Probably, if you're putting enough in there, you don't want it to crystallize and harden and become unusable. but it definitely made me think a little bit differently about pen hardware. So we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. I just want to introduce the rest of everyone on the panel. I'd love to welcome Jen Doe to the room, holding it down as she always does. We love to have Jen Doe on here, super intelligent and finger on the pulse, and just a great hash maker, like no doubt about it. Always happy to see your photos, Jen. Always get my mouth watering when I see the headies and the air dried resin. We're going to talk about air dried versus freeze dried. I know Jen's going to have a shit ton to say about that today. So welcome, Jen Doe.
Hi, thank you. What a wonderful introduction. Thanks, Marcus.
Well, you're well deserving of a wonderful introduction, aren't you?
I think so.
I think so as well. Absolutely. So yeah, we're going to get into some good conversations for sure. Um, Colin Palmer. I feel like I've been making hash with this guy for like 25 years, yet we've never made hash together. How about that?
The truth. It is the truth. But we sure talked a lot about it over the years, my man.
Dude, True Stoners at least 25 years ago.
Straight up. Yeah, it's where like Jill, OT1, I mean, Subcool was in
Steppenwolf.
there. Steppenwolf, Kaka. I mean, man, a lot of
Haka.
legends in there. A lot of good heads that I'd love to see more of that perhaps are not comfortable with coming out. But yeah. Yeah, we've been making
Well,
hash a long time, man.
yeah, that's awesome. Well, it's good to have you here. I know we're going to have a good conversation for sure. And
Yeah.
I would also like to welcome Tim Clark, Deep Search, to the room. I know we've been talking about getting him on a show here for a bit. He's good friends with Aaron. Aaron turned me on to Tim, and we're happy to talk to you today, Tim. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing today, Marcus? Excellent panel we got going on here. We're gonna have a
Yeah,
bunch of hash talk today, and I'm excited about that.
absolutely. We'll be covering the gamut. There's no doubt about it. Aromatic volatile compounds, cannabinoids, different ways of dabbing. We're going to talk about parchment paper and what these different contaminations are that people are mentioning right now. I saw one the other day. I could picture pressing in your parchment, contaminating your hash, but someone made a post the other day, and I'm not sure if this was bro science. Might have to send the link to Dr. Mark, but he was like, if you put your hash on parchment, even at room temperature, you're going to contaminate it. And I was like, really? That sounds like some bro science. I'm going to need some documentation to get into that one a little bit deeper.
Yeah,
But
we'll definitely cover that.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Want to welcome Caitlin, who just popped in from High Fidelity. I know she's like not able to spend a lot of time with us today, but Caitlin's an incredible hash maker here in Canada with the High Fidelity rosin brand. They're pumping out diamonds and pumping out like really beautiful. It was the first really great rosin that I found on the legal market for certain. I believe it was Rainbow Driver or Rain.
Yes,
Was
it
that right?
was. Yes, it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, I always mix up the rainbows. There's too many rainbows now. You
There
remember
is.
when I was a kid, there was just one rainbow. Now there's a lot of rainbows.
Yeah, that Rainbow Driver is something special though. Thanks for enjoying it the same way that I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was also kind of trippy that I feel like the guy who grew it was maybe my old grow partner back like 25 years ago. So that was a
It
kind of a
was.
trippy
Yeah,
full circle as well. I had no idea whatsoever. The world is a small world, is it not? Where
it
you just
is.
I hadn't seen him in 20 years, maybe 15, but close to 20. And so it was very cool after smoking your rosin to be like, my homie Ty grew this? Oh shit, this is full circle. So
That's so
awesome.
cool.
I remember when I got my jar, I was driving across Canada and I was like, oh, there's a cool lake. I'm gonna stop and put the jar up and take a picture. And oh, there's a cool mountain. I'm gonna stop and put the jar down and take. Do you remember those pictures I took on my
I
way home?
do. I do. That was amazing. I feel
Yeah,
honored
just
that you did that. That's so cool.
well, when it's good, we're excited, right? When it's good, we're excited. When it gets the mouth watering, we are excited. So yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Uh, Awesome. Well, last but certainly not least, Wade Laughter. You're looking good today, Wade. How you doing, brother?
Uh, Good. I'm doing pretty good today. Had a nice visit with Etienne Fontaine yesterday here on the farm, and
Nice.
yeah, it was very sweet. Anyway, I'm going to go back to listening. I love hash. Have not had the chance to make some in quite a while. Looking forward to this conversation.
Wade is not chance to make hash in a while. Wouldn't it be cool if maybe we got someone to go over there with some bags and some material and like whip off a batch with Wade? That would be kind of a fun thing. Everyone needs to make hash every once in a while. I feel like there's a joy in it. I'll never forget when my mother, who worked for the police for 35 years as a 911 operator, who never smoked weed, who never smoked hash, who never made hash, who was never around weed. I brought her to my house one time here in BC very early on, and I had her make a batch. I just gave her the bags. I gave her the ice and the water and the material, and I said, "You're gonna make some hash." And she was like, "Okay." And it was like so old school. We were still using like a cake mixer, like a $9 cake mixer from Walmart. And so I had my mom in the kitchen whipping up the medicine, and I remember it was full melt. It came out like 6-star full melt. It was, I don't know what it was back in the day, but every single material that I used to get, and I think this was an anomaly, and I really look at it now as an anomaly that had it not happened for me, had it not happened for Nick T, had it not happened for a few of us, I just don't think we would have become who we became. We had this incredible access to material, and I'm sure part of that was that we have a very specialized olfactory. We were sniffing it out in a way, but I'll tell you, man, I really got to shout out all the people I used to get material from in the early days, because every material that I put into the bags in those early days, since Breeder Steve gave me the shishka berry, the yellow Afghan population there, it just never turned back. It was like 6 to 10 years straight of just like putting full melt into the bag. I see a lot less of it today, and I'll ask that question to the rest of the panel if you guys see a lot less of it today. And I wonder, you know, when there's a place for something to go, does it make it harder? Like if you're trying to get something that's special, but you don't get it, and then there's still a place for that to go. Oh, I didn't get the special, but you can take it and put it over here, and now it still has a home. Is it harder to get to that special? And the reason, the metaphor I'll use is, you've got the fallback. There's irradiation. You can irradiate cannabis. This is a fallback for when you fail microbials, right? And it's not something you should be trying to do, failing microbials. You should try to grow the best cannabis possible. And if you have some random problem where somehow you ended up with a contamination and you grew a 400-kilo crop, you don't have to basically throw it away. You could irradiate it and still maintain it. So the problem with irradiation is that because it exists, instead of people growing exceptional cannabis, a lot of people are like, "Oh, we just grow cannabis. It doesn't matter if it gets molds or mildews. It really doesn't matter because we're just going to irradiate it anyway." So it becomes this double-edged sword. And I kind of see it with, I mean, I saw it in the beginning when people would try to make bubble. Guys like Nick T would throw material in the bag, 6-star. But a lot of other people would throw material into the bag and they'd be like, "Hey, my hash, how do I get it to stick together like yours? And how do you get it to melt?" And it's like, well, that is a long journey, bro. You got to like learn about the symbiotic relationships of mycorrhizospheres, and you have to understand the plant, and you have to be able to sniff out the right genetics. And so I just wonder, would we see more full melt if there wasn't so many other places for it to go when it wasn't melty, when they can still find a home for it, which used to be BHO, which now seems to be rosin. And don't get me wrong, I love rosin, and I know lots of people loved BHO. I just feel like a lot of mediocre bubble that just never melted or never dabbed would go into either a BHO process earlier. Now with live hash rosin, younger people that are like, "I don't want to blow up." They're like, "I can just use a hair straightener." Do you guys see a problem with that? Do you guys see like that there's less melts available because there's these ways out for people to take instead of that long journey of learning how to grow cannabis properly? What do you guys think about that question?
I mean,
Yeah.
I
A little
guess
bit.
I'm one of the rosin guys here. So yes, I do. And I've actually been talking to Jen. I'm like, "Jen, give me some fucking full melt." You're right. A lot of dirty hash is sent to rosin. And that's why myself try to wash at least the first load or the first wash very, very sensitively. Even washing in an osprey, I will I very well may paddle it for the first wash, and that gets set aside for premium. And then there's other uses for other stuff. You can put them in vape carts, which I'm kind of not a fan of, or you can send it to edibles.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, John? I know you do these like super light washes and pull, and tell us a little bit about your production of melt when you're washing.
Yeah, it's definitely like uh a very select portion of total output. But yeah, I mean I think as far as whether or not starting material is less quality these days. Um yeah, I think there's in prohibition times, yeah, I think folks were probably the people that were doing it were just a lot more heavily invested in production in their process, and therefore the subsequent outputs are an overall higher quality. I'd hate to think that people are just falling back on more worked processes to get around those um,
I feel like today's
traits.
material is even higher quality than it was back in the day, especially because we're able to select for washers. I think
Hmm.
the main difference that you guys talked about is the micron separation and what we're separating for, why, how we're allocating those products. You see less people wanting full melt now that rosin's available, but in reality, distillate is still king. We're a small niche. Us right here, this group, we're a tiny niche still in most markets. We're less than 2% of the concentrate market in Jersey right now is solventless. Looking at that big picture, but I think access to material has really, really changed. I mean, when I first started, fresh frozen didn't exist.
Yeah.
Now we're freezing whole plants just for this process. So I think the initial starting material has gotten a lot better. It's just in how we're allocating it.
My,
Sorry
you
Yeah.
know,
to
my
cut you off, John.
Oh,
no,
it's all right.
I think there's a lot of things you can talk about when we're talking about starting material. I always grew my own material until commercially we had to draw a line in the sand and make teams and put everybody in certain places. And sure, I was in the grow room, but it wasn't my every single second of my life like it used to be. So I think, yes, we have better access to varietals, but I don't know if the quality is as it, we're not taking the same care. It's not as do or die because of how much we have now. So it feels to me like we're a little bit looser. So we may be, like you just said, nicotine, it's like, yeah, we may be growing great herb, but then you're taking, the 120 bag out to let it all fall into the 45 or whatever that might be for whoever hash maker that is. And that's just not the right modality, right? So I think we're seeing a lot of these things in different cutting corners in different forms through the process that I think has really, we've arrived at this place where there's levels to the game, right? And I think there's most people are trying to find a way to cut that corner, remove that bag to save that time where guys like all of us here, we live by those bags, at least I do. And our team really lives by grading it out and then deciding what out of that varietal, what is here that is great, because respectfully, we can all agree each micron from different varietals have a quality to them. And you start to see like 120 can be fantastic in certain varietals and 90 just below it or vice versa.
Yeah.
So taking all of that into consideration, you have a lot of things that along the way, let's in terms of touch points that amount to what we say is quality today. And it's a lot to talk about, So I think,
Well,
from new,
it speaks volumes too to what Nikiti just said. Like, distillate is king, and what did I just ask? Like, is it these is it these negatives that are acted as a double-edged sword that kind of fall into like, oh, we just grow moldy weed because we're just gonna irradiate it. It's like, well, distillate seems like the ultimate cut. It's just like it's the easiest, it's the quickest. It's like, yeah, we'll just make distillate. Like we can just grow fields of weed. It doesn't really matter what it looks like or the percentage of THC because we're just gonna collect it in the end. And don't get me wrong, like I feel that it's important to have all of these different aspects, but distillate definitely is king in the
It's
world
running
of
the markets,
it is.
we're constantly, by educating, we're changing it daily. I mean, I think we're at 18% of the concentrate market in California, but it fluctuates, and it didn't start like that. When I started in Colorado, the reason we coined that term solventless, because nobody knew what we were doing. It didn't look like the other products on the shelf. We had to educate. So I feel like the more we educate, the more that our percentage grows in the markets.
Yeah, you're definitely not wrong. I was watching that the well, actually, I was watching the Canada versus USA hockey game recently and kind of falling into that little thing. And then I'm reading a book by Wayne Gretzky right now as well, and he talked about why hockey was never quite as big as the NFL and the NBA and these other sports. And he talks about the importance of the players not just playing the game but building the game. And when I look at all of you, you guys are the players playing the game as well as the players building the game. We have to build the game, and it's a different game for us because obviously, we're not going to build the game the same way they build the game in hockey, because how they do that is they go the famous hockey players go to the younger arenas and they inspire the youth. So obviously we're not going to be allowed to, I'm going to go inspire a bunch of young 8-year-olds to make hash in their future. No, that's not doable. But we can hit the youth up at that 20 to 22 to 23-year-old, the younger hash makers that are coming up, make sure that we have sort of inspiration, make sure that that torch is consistently getting passed, I never really thought about the torch getting passed until Sam passed away recently. I just kind of thought Sam would hold that torch forever. How could he not? He's Sam, he's the grandfather of so much of this, like water hash in 88, dry sift from the early 80s, like just been doing these hashes of this quality for so much longer than the rest of us that I never thought that that torch would get passed. And now I see that, Sam's passed that torch on really to all of you. So congratulations. You guys are that next generation. Inspire, make great product, be a good person, be a good example, and yeah, share the knowledge and the information. And that is definitely one of the most important things.
So I want to agree with Colin and Nick as far as, um, the details have been kind of taken out and missed. And honestly, if we backtrack, like, where did this all start, right? Like, so we had all this good melt, and then all of a sudden it just feels like it fell off. I personally think that I saw that happen with the introduction of the freeze dryer, right? Because now when you're not air drying, we don't have that plant material that can then oxidize our material or our hash faster. Pretty much anything you put through a freeze dryer, you're getting that lighter color. And so people aren't realizing everything that's still left in there. And so with the cutting corners, like Colin said, the mixing microns, like Nick said, we're missing a lot of those steps. Like for us and how we had to learn, it was all about the filtration at the top, right? So by removing all these bags, removing that filtration, then we're putting it through a freeze dryer and it's keeping that light color that they're looking for. And they're not able to really evaluate whether it's going to be melt or not by that pull. Whereas when we have it on drying racks, we're able to get in there with our fingers and actually see how it's going to melt. It's also a cleaner product because when we learned, we had to focus so hard on the cleanliness of the product before it left the bag. And now with the introduction of the freeze dryer and rosin, that's kind of the lost steps in there, right? It's that extra cleaning. It's that extra attention to filtering those out beforehand. So, and I kind of agree with Nick, like we've got a lot of really great genetics out there, great growers. So I don't feel like that's the case. I think a lot of it is just it's lost in the details. These details are cut out, and so yeah, I think it was the freeze dryer that kind of like steered us away from looking for that melt and being able to produce it in a way because we didn't have that as a tool.
Yeah.
Also,
I will say as a photographer, when I started photographing, the real difference I saw is that without really, this was even really before like massive cleaning in the bags, rinsing and rinsing and rinsing. When I would make hash and air dry it, whatever little stalks may have been left in there, they just got like absorbed by the blobs of heads. They would just air dry and congeal and create that beautiful look that we all love so much. And when I photographed that, you could never see a stalk. But when you freeze dry and sublimate those stalks and you remove all the moisture, you create this almost artifact. It's like a you can't get rid of it. It's there. You can just see it as clear as day. I get my macro lens out on freeze-dried material and I see these things. They're not conglomerated. They're in the mix, but they're on the outside. And I always thought, I wonder if that's affecting the melt factor. The same way when you microplane heads that really aren't that melty and you put that resin on the outside, much like those stalks are, you get a sort of faux melt effect, right? That effect of like a resin that's not really as melty. You can microplane it, open up the heads through that thick membrane, access that oil, and then when that flame hits it, it appears to melt maybe substantially more than it would melt if it was left in heads. So it's definitely an interesting conversation when it comes to the freeze dryer versus air dry. One of the things I love about John's hash for sure is that it's all air dried and it's perfect, beautiful powder. As long as I keep it at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, it just stays in beautiful powder. The minute it's out at room temperature for a very, very short period of time, it just congeals into almost glass, but it's still gummy. You can still, stretch it out at room temperature. And yeah, it's just beautiful hash, John. Shout out to you, brother.
Thank you
And
for
I
having
think
me.
I think another component, like if we think about, let's take it back to like traditional hash, right? What is the purpose for aging hash, right? So a lot of it has to do with allowing those terpenes to age and break down any of the material that is not cleaned out of that hash. So it'll actually help to break that material down. Therefore, it's not as apparent. Well, when we're air drying and able to keep the temperature just above freezing, we're allowing those terpenes to essentially do their job still, right? Whereas when we're taking it down to such a low level, those terpenes aren't actually able to get in there and help with the breakdown of those stalks and those smaller particulates.
Fletch's ears were burning. We were talking about freeze dryers. Boom.
Yeah, I
Got something
wanted
to
to
say about that, Fletch?
go
he's
ahead.
coming in. But I think you're touching on a lot of great things here, Jen. I think there's air drying is really the art form that I think every young hash maker should start with. And then from there, you can start to understand your inherent material around you and the world in which you occupy for the idea of separating. And then you can move yourself into these higher levels of thinking. But you have to understand the air dry method is the basis for understanding how to freeze dry. It truly is. If you don't understand that method, I highly recommend young hash makers that are listening to go and read and try and make. As Marcus said before, it shouldn't be impossible to make hash. It should be something you can just pick up and do. It's a linear process. It's like drawing a picture. Pick the pen up, pick the pencil up, and do. So I really recommend that, but it's air drying, I think, is the way forward for anyone out there that wants to learn.
I love that Fletch just popped on though, for real. Because he's really the pioneer, I'd say, of the freeze dryer. He was the first that I saw that I heard of that
100%.
got one for hash. So I don't know. Let's hear something from Fletch. Big up yourself, Fletch.
He might be having a problem because normally he'd already be in. Excuse me.
I have to throw it out there
Um,
though. I don't disagree with anybody out there as far as air drying, but I do hate the hate towards freeze dryers. There are a lot of variables that people can screw up, and I mean a lot of variables that people could screw up. But if you're using all the bags, you're paying attention to the details, which again are numerous, and scope your hash after it's freeze dried. I've flagged it up before. Absolutely. I've got full melt hash on a freeze dryer.
Freeze dryer saved water hash, to be completely honest. It's what we had to put into our SOPs to appease the health department because we
100%.
needed something in our SOPs that mitigated the chance for mold and microbial. Without the freeze dryer, there wouldn't be water hash in Vegas right now. I know that 100%. There's a lot of Colorado. There wouldn't be hash in Colorado. The health department was fighting water hash when people like, oh man, what was that guy's name? Something hash, but either way, he like failed a bunch of mold and microbial tests because he was using like old used washing machines. And it was about to kill water hash in general. So I think the freeze dryer really saved a lot of us.
Yeah,
It
Canada was
also,
the same
Yeah,
way.
go ahead.
Sorry,
Go
go ahead.
ahead.
oh, I was going to say it also helped us to scale up, because the process is not actually much faster. It's just more space, more space that we're able to save by doing it. I mean, imagine how many bread racks, right, would it take to equal one tray?
Yeah, I said
About 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, big
My
time.
last
I
lab
agree with
that we
that.
air dried in had 18 speed
Mhm.
racks.
Yep.
We had
Yeah.
an
So think
entire
about that.
room, temperature, humidity controlled in a basement in Colorado, just dedicated to drying 18 speed racks.
Can
So
you
in that
imagine?
18 speed racks, you could fit that in one freeze dryer practically, And so I don't know if anybody's paid attention to the size of washrooms lately, but it's not like we all have room for 18 racks.
Can you
It's a
guys
lot for
imagine
sure.
how scarce solventless material would be in the community if we didn't have freeze dryers?
Mhm.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
in Canada it was essential. I mean, our regulations are so strict and anyone can
Plus,
be, this is the other strange thing about, and I've suffered this like many times. I mean, many, many times. There's something about people in cannabis, and we're always just sort of afraid. We always create a division. We always, oh, this is better than this. It's just in everything we do, we always, it might be human nature. I don't know. I've just seen it since I've been involved. Oh, no, you gotta, I don't roll cones. Those are the worst. You gotta roll them straight. We all have these like really strong opinions of how we want things to be experienced or how we want to turn people on. For when it comes to freeze dryer versus air dry, I absolutely love the way air dried hash looks, feels, photographs. It's like photographing the most beautiful image when it comes to air dried hash versus freeze dried hash is it just doesn't come out quite the same in a photo. And there's something to be said about that. That being said, I've also flagged full melt out of freeze dryers. Absolutely pulled
Mhm.
6-star
I
out of freeze dryers, 100%. Go ahead. Someone was chiming in there.
Oh, I can make
Oh,
any
there he is.
I can make any freeze dried hash look exactly like your dry air dried hash. All I literally have to do is put my freeze dried hash into a cold room, just like where you're drying your air dried hash, and leave it there for like a few hours, and it'll start, melting down and looking like air dried.
yeah.
With the freeze dryer, it is about really understanding the settings. I think a lot of people don't have an understanding of the vacuum and the settings and the process of sublimation. And I think they just kind of follow recipes that are given to them. And if you're lucky enough to follow one
Yeah.
that is a good one, you kind of can end up with it. Let's just say you can definitely deterp your material with the wrong settings on a freeze dryer.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
was just going to mention that, like what Jen said. With the freeze dryer, there are so many variables that you can absolutely screw your hash up if not paying attention in a freeze dryer, big time.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
Fletch, I think
initially the
it's
freeze dryer didn't even work because the shelf temperatures were only 120 degrees. It wasn't until we
that's what I
developed
remember.
Yeah, it wasn't until
Yeah.
we developed the 40-degree shelf, which never existed in, like, here was the thing is that the freeze dryer was never going to work as designed because almost all other stuff that's used for freeze dry that they use for freeze drying is to remove a significant amount of water volume. Like an apple is like 50% water. So to be able to get, sure, if you put a freeze dryer at 5 degrees, let's say, and try to freeze dry an apple, it's going to take you 2 weeks or something, probably. You know, so
Yeah.
it's not it's all about application method. And so, you know, with or with hash in particular, what I realized with the freeze dryers, there's absolutely no need. Not only does it cook your hash with 120-degree shelf temp, like every freeze dryer that existed prior to, you know, the harvest right models having the tunable shelf temperature, which we gave them the technology and the knowledge to be able to even manufacture that product. You know, we never even had the option to do that. And the temperature was the main problem with the entire process. And because there's only maybe like an ounce or two of water in a tray of nice bubble, I knew that it wasn't going to take a month to dry at 5 degrees. And that was really the key. And, you know, now what, you know, the same thing is true. The lower the temperature of your shelf temp, the better the quality of your hash is going to come out, because the head is frozen more and it's keeping everything inside the head, or more so keeping it inside the head. The problem is you've got your vacuum trying to suck everything out. And so even if you have, let's say, a low shelf temperature, if you're vacuuming for 4 days, you might suck all your terps out too. So the real key with the freeze dryer, and this is the same with air dry as well, is to reduce your dry time and your exposure to air environment to be as little as possible. So reducing your water weight's going to also reduce your dry time, which is also going to reduce your exposure to vacuum, etc.
I can't disagree with that at all. We've collected the ice that's been around the inside of the freeze dryer before, and isolated the terpenes that we have actually lost otherwise.
Totally.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said, Fletch. And it's also, you know, we found different pumps get us down to vacuum faster and allow us to have a better curve. We found ourselves using the harvest rate scientifics really quickly because we could tune the vacuum as well as the staging for every single stage, and we got really meticulous. It was like a drum machine for me. I was like tuning all the little, like just tuning everything so each stage would have a step and a easier curve up to the next. Because the millitors we found matter, you know, through every stage. And if you're just letting it rip, you're doing yourself in the product process a total disservice. You know, it's like using a drum hit and not tuning the EQ. You know, you have to, you know, sonically tune it.
I guess
So
my question there is, like, what staging are you talking about exactly? Like, you mean the vacuum not reaching full vacuum, or I'm not sure what you
yeah,
mean
just
there.
not letting it go on like a governor, like going all the way to full vacuum. Because if you let it get down too fast, like if you stay down. You know, the goal with like Lab Conco, for instance, or you know, the scientific is to get to zero, right? And get as far down as you can. And how quickly you get there, we found matters. It's about, you know, does it take you longer to get there? Because your process will take that much longer for it to happen. And then it'll, as you know, as we talked about, we found that we have less volatile organic compounds through the process when we don't tune each stage. So
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that people should keep in mind or look at with the freeze dryer process is that every single compound, especially your terps, are going to have different boiling points, right? So they have different vacuum points and different temperatures at which they're going to volatilize. So quickly, you know, fast, or stay around, or get cooked or converted or whatever, is all going to be determined by your exposure time and temperature. So, like for example, with just drying hash, like if I take basically, here's the two main things with freeze drying. A lot of people talk about leaving a lot of water in the hash, right? Because they don't want all the hash to compact, right? And the problem with that is you're increasing your water volume that needs to get freeze dried out. The benefit to it is that it keeps all your trichome heads set. The water that you're leaving in your slurry, let's call it, that's what keeps your heads from compacting when it's freeze drying, right? It keeps everything apart from each other. If you
So
pull too much water out, like press it out and then try and freeze dry it, you'll get ice that gets stuck in the middle of your hash, right? And you'll get compaction of your hash as well. And so the real key is to try to figure out how to reduce as much water as possible, but avoid compaction. And that's going to yield you the shortest freeze drying time. And like I would pretty much argue that there's no other drying method, if applied correctly, that you can dry your hash with this little exposure to either oxygen or just evaporation of your terpenes than the freeze dryer. Like I said, I mean, anybody that's like super on the air dried tip, I can just take my freeze dried hash and I can make it look, smell, taste exactly like your air dried hash by just taking my freeze dried hash and putting it in the same environment that you're drying your air dried hash in. It only takes me a couple hours. And I guarantee you won't be able to tell the difference between the air dried and the freeze dried. It's literally just like a big part of why a lot of people prefer the look of air dried hashes, just because the heads have congealed down and you've lost the air that's in between the trichome heads. So like the reason the freeze dried hash doesn't look as clear, like see-through, as freeze dried hash is mainly two reasons. One is that it all melts down. One reason with freeze dried hash is that the stalks that are contaminant in your product, they don't dry down at all. They maintain their like cellular structure. So the stalks look larger under a microscope when it's freeze dried and not air dried. The other thing is those stalks and all the air bubbles that are in between those heads get stuck inside the hash. So just like if you've ever like had a faucet in your house that it gets air bubbles in it, and you pour a glass of water and it's all white looking and opaque and it's full of bubbles, and then the bubbles dissipate and then it looks clear. That's the same thing happening to your freeze dried hash.
Okay, you just said a lot there. I want to make a few points here real quick. So first you were talking about the different volatiles in regards to the freeze dryer, and it made me think, wow, you could use Kylie's unit, right? The Indux Labs. You guys, I'm sure, are familiar with this Indux Lab vaporizer. If I can get it open, it's definitely not the easiest one.
Real
Get
quickly,
open.
while he's trying to open that damn thing up, I'm a little confused on leaving water in hash. Like, are you then air drying it out of the freeze dryer or what? Because I have pressed hash that has mistakenly had water in it and it's molded.
No, there's no water in it. There's definitely no water in the hash.
I'm talking about the volume of water in the slurry
in the tray.
Yeah, before you freeze dry it. If I have, let's say, 10 ounces of water and 100 grams of hash instead of 2 ounces of water and 100 grams of hash, when I pour my slurry into the tray, I'm going to have drastically different freeze dryer process for each product.
Yeah, 100%. If you're putting like super wet hash on your trays, you're making a mistake.
Yeah, there's different ways.
It's also not just about it's not just about like how much water you put in the tray, but it's also like how many trays are you using. So like if you space it out, that shortens out your freeze drying time tremendously. And so for us, like, we're at a commercial scale that we're at, freeze drying time is of the essence. Sometimes you got to crank through product. And so being at the mercy of a freeze dryer can be frustrating, but at the same time, if you can just thin out your trays a little bit more, even if you have the same amount of water content that Fletch is talking about, if you just thin it out a bit more, it will still dry at a faster pace, if that makes sense.
I prefer to reduce the liquid, and I use screens that I got from Fletch that the hash goes over top of, and then it doesn't compact the same way because the air has somewhere to go. Like it can go up and down. But bear with me, because this was a thought while Fletch was talking, and I had a lot of them, and I'm super baked, so I want to at least get one of them out, which was when he was talking about how different volatile aromatic compounds are going to volatilize at different temperatures, depending on whether they're monos or thiols or whatever. And so it got me thinking that like this Indux unit that you can literally dial so sensitively that you can discover the flavor profiles in your product by climbing up the ladder and increasing the heat. And it's so delicate. Anyone that's ever used this unit, it's like you can literally taste different aromatic volatile compounds at different temperatures, substantially different. And so it got me to thinking like, what if there was a tool like this that was sort of a part of a freeze dryer as well. And you could test your material before you put it into the freeze dryer, even if you air dried a little bit, to find out exactly what's in it in regards to your temperatures. And now you are going to, adjust your temperatures accordingly. It also got me thinking that perhaps the freeze dryer that we have today is not the freeze dryer that we're going to have tomorrow when it comes to cannabis. And so I would ask you, Fletch, do you think that there's a lot more room for us to improve this tool for cannabis use?
Yeah, I do think there is a good amount. I mean, I think I'd say it's 90+% the way there already. I think that, one thing you were commenting earlier, Marcus, was that like um the unnecessary division in the space and how everybody likes to draw these artificial lines in the sand about one product or process is better, but it's always an argument about qualitative stuff. It's not ever an argument about what the science behind the qualitative analysis is, right? And so that's probably my biggest gripe is there's so many people that want to argue about shit on the internet, but then when you actually want to have a conversation with them about the science behind it and why we're doing it and how your knowledge and experience could play off of mine, and then we could find what the next level is, what that improvement to the product could be. And what you typically find is the other person is completely uninterested in improving their process or your process at all. They're just simply interested in arguing with you about which one's better. And it's the most pointless shit because you can't actually have a real conversation with anyone about it. They just want to argue about qualitative stuff that they've experienced quality wise, but they can't tell you why anything is the way that it is. And it's a lack of people's interest in the scientific process and doing experiments that is essentially the main crux in the road that people don't want to cross. That's been my experience.
I think because most people don't look at it as an art form and they're trying to monetize off of every batch. And I think that's not my game. My game's always been like, how do I make it better for me? And then if I can share it beyond that, that's great. And I think that, when it becomes your business, I think there's an inherent, yeah, sure, get your business done, but like, dude, this is, as you just said, this is a long journey that you need to take risks to really find the truth in. And finding that truth is going to take tons of time and tons of experiments. I mean, it's why we started looking at different pumps. It's why we started, like, as you said, all these VOCs have a different temperature in which they either combust or they're going to volatilize at, right? So I think that through that process, shelf temp matters. I was just looking at, as I was saying, like looking at what we changed our shelf temp as the temp in the chamber changed, and we finish at -10, right? Because that's, I'm looking at it now. It goes from 10 to 20 to 30 to -30 to 25 to 10, right? And that's how we've been doing it. And then the pump, is also a correlation to that because of these, all of these things all matter. It's a linear process it's like playing music to me, right? You have to have this inherent connection to each step. Otherwise, it's incomplete. There is no linear A to B or B to C. You can't skip around. So when you're dealing with shelf temperature, it has to be linear and it has to make sense for the process. And that has to do with not only shelf temp, but environmental temp in the chamber, and then your vacuum. Where are you at? So all of that stuff I think is super important. We're really passionate about that in the lab. Is each batch is not the same. There is no silver bullet when you're dealing with freeze dry times or temperatures or even vacuum. You can try that, but I don't think that you're doing the best process that you as an individual can do.
There's
Um,
another, well, didn't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
well, I just encourage people to push themselves to try different things, try shorter times, try different vacuum times. Go get a lot, go get a different type of freeze dryer other than a harvest rate. There's, we have a lot of really great options that were never there in the beginning when we all started. Holland Green is one that look at. I think Lab Conco is just out of everybody's hands because of how expensive it is, but it's a great tool.
Lab Conco was a surprise when you buy that one because you have to understand it's not a freezer.
Yeah.
It's
Although it will stay cold because that thing, the
if you,
chamber
yes, it'll stay
is
cold, but
freezing.
it's not a freezer. So,
That's
like
right.
one thing that you'll learn about the Lab Conco when you use it is that you need a freezer. And you need to freeze your trays like at minus 20 or 30 degrees Celsius before they go into the Lab Conco. And so once they go into the Lab Conco, like if you just leave at night and be like, oh, I'll just come back tomorrow morning and open the thing, this is what I'll say about the Lab Conco. There's a lot to learn with the Lab Conco. It's a truly a lab freeze dryer. It's used for like freeze drying all sorts of different things in like vials and ampules, more so than like trays filled with hash. I know this because I've talked to them many a times, and they're like, "Yeah, we did not design this for you to like dump wet hash into and freeze dry it." They also have thicker, deeper trays, so they fit a lot more hash. What I will say about that is it was hard to keep it cold all the way through. And whenever I opened my Lab Conco trays or doors versus all my harvest rights, holy shit, was that a world of difference. Also, that Lab Conco was like $25,000 with a $10,000 pump, and I could buy harvest rights for like 5 Gs. So you gotta like also think like, do you need this super high end freeze dryer with now a freezer? I had to buy a special freezer that had the slots for the trays, right? To put the trays in for to freeze all of our trays to go into the Lab Concos. And yeah, I when I consult for people, I generally tell people like, yes, the harvest rights are a pain in the ass, and everyone loves to complain about them, but like you should be able to like dry 10 to 20 to 30 kilos before one of those things gives you a problem. And to me, that's a good number. That's like, oh yeah, I can spend $150 getting a new relay for my Lab Conco or whatever. I just ran like 25 kilos through it or 50 kilos. I mean, honestly, I have Lab Concos that I've run over 100 kilos through of hash that are not Lab Concos, sorry, harvest rights that never gave me a
Mm.
problem.
The Lab Conco for me was the 6 hour dry time, man. When I could hit that and see the material come out the way it did and the particular settings that we landed on over time, this took a lot of months to work on. It changed our game. I mean, we started then freezing our trays to go into harvest rights, because it
Mm,
changed conceptually, it changed how we thought about things. And it's a fantastic tool, man. To me, it's like a modular synth that you have the ability to really tune to get your sound just right for you. Um,
yeah.
I
Well, it's
recommend it.
definitely
You're
for
right.
professionals. It's for professionals.
Super.
It's like, and that's why today I want to not only talk about freeze dryers, although I love the conversation and I think we should go as deep as it goes. I do want to get back to a point later on where we get into air drying, and I want to kind of hear everyone's sort of revelationary moment for their air drying and how they were able to, get it to dry properly. Because to me, back then, the drying of it was really the first real, I mean, the other stuff came to me very naturally, like don't over mix it, don't like beat the shit out of it, like put in nice material. All that stuff seemed like common sense. The drying did not seem like common sense. And I will admit, I fucked that up pretty good back in the 90s when I would just like finger pressing it right out of the bag, all just like, oh yeah, like just water dripping down my arm, just like, oh yeah, man, this is gonna be beautiful. And crack popple, like just blowing up in the bowl because it's full of water. And then, of course, the classic molding of the hash, the molding of the hash, and how much hash I was unfortunately responsible for molding because I just showed people the incorrect way to well, I wasn't even showing them to dry it at all. I was just like, just finger press that shit in your hand, just squeeze all the water out, it'll be fine. It was not fine, in fact. That turned out to be incorrect. And yeah, that was a hard pill to swallow. That took me a couple of years. That's why I was so religious about like, just please make sure you dry your hash. And also bumping into people where they would pull out their hash and show it to me. And sometimes I could tell it was really nice hash, but it was like it was funked. It was just like it was wet. And, I was just like, oh my God, that's my fault. So I'm very happy that A, Fletch turned the world on to freeze dryers from a commercial standpoint, because I'll tell you, making 40 or 50 kilos of bubble in a commercial environment and even coming close, microbial is so insane. For instance, the microbial count failure for Michigan is 100,000. But I believe in Illinois, and correct me if any of you know that I'm wrong, I believe in Illinois it's 1,000. Think about that. That is like you will have a hard time getting a pass on anything. I feel like RadSource cut a deal with the Illinois government and was like, make it 1,000 CFCs or whatever the yeast and mold count measurement is, because
CFU.
CFU, thank you, Tim. CFU, make sure they have the max is 1,000, and we will be in business. I cannot imagine if anything in Illinois is sold without irradiation, because that's an absolutely incredibly low number.
You know what? I think one of the big parts to that is this is medicine. Treat your room like a lab. You need to go in and you need to make sure that you're clean. You need to make sure that any exterior that you're wearing stays in the lab. Cleanliness is key.
Yeah. Well, I
Not
think
wrong.
I think you're right about that. And in New York State where we're operating, our lab has to deal with 10,000 CFUs, which